Okay, general trim product video training. We're going to set some of the relays. Okay, so setting the relays, again, remember these machines, these universal machines have two different portions to them. There's the inputs and the outputs. Okay, the inputs are where the sensors come in and how they get set up, which we've gone over in some of the other videos, but then this is the outputs version of it. Well, how we want the bleed in this fact, the bleed or R1, you can see there's little labels on here. We can figure out how the bleed is going to act. So I'm going to go menu. I'm going to go right to my outputs. R1, I'm going to make that my bleed. Okay, so how do I want it to bleed? And this is kind of set on off. On off is really kind of the generic way of saying I want to set a set point, and I want it to, if it goes above there, I want it to come down, or if it goes below there, I want it to come on. Okay, so there's directional portions in this relay that you can make it change. So on off is probably the right one. What I want you to do is I want you to go in, pan down to your bottom, always make sure mode is the first thing you should check. When you're going to set up your relays, make sure it's in the proper mode before you answer any of the questions. We know it's set it on off, but if somebody changed, say, dual proportional to say on off, they're going to trick you with it. Want to make sure it's in on off mode. Say it says dual set point or time proportional, you could change the name. So it could say on off. And someone's got it programmed in properly. So pick the one that you want it to be. In this case, we do want it to be on off. We're going to hit the check mark, give it a second, and then we're going to hit the maintenance button again. So now what we have, we know that it's set up on off, and we know that we're going to go ahead and set our bleed valve. So the first thing I want you to do with the 100 series is always set everything to auto. We do have a nice on-off feature, an on-off button on the main menu, which lets us change it to auto. So we don't have to really do it here right now. We could just set it up. So set point right now says 1,000. I'm going to make it say 1,500. Just that simple. Okay? Make it say 1,500. My deadband where I want it to shut off, I wouldn't recommend 25, so I'm going to say 100. I'm going to hit the reason why I don't recommend 25 is we've all walked up to this machine and seen it jumping around on connectivity. And we've seen it all of us have seen it jump more than 25 microsiemens. So it could jump in and then jump right back out. We don't want chatter, okay? We want it to go into there, make sure, I hardly ever see it jump 100 microsiemens. So I'm gonna put it in 100 microsiemens just to make sure that we don't have that chatter. Duty cycle should be duty cycle 100%, that's where it should be. I want you to change that. An on delay means is that when it goes to activate it, I don't want it to activate until at least it's been in. It helps cut out that jumping around stuff. So the on delay of, and you see hours, minutes, and seconds of, let's say, 20 seconds, is going to make sure that if this jumps around and jumps in, it doesn't come on unless it stays in for at least 20 seconds. Okay, see what that means? And then an off delay does the same thing, but reverse, that when I've corrected the condition, I went past my deadband, I got to stay at there for 20 seconds before I go ahead and actually shut off. Okay, it helps stop that jumping around you may be having with motorized valves or capacitor closed valves and stuff like that. You won't have a problem with your solenoid valve, but in the solenoid valve cases, if it jumps in and jumps out, your solenoid goes you're just going to wear out your solenoid. Don't wear out your solenoid. Energize it and hold it for a little while and then close it. Okay, make sure it is. I got it set for 20 seconds. You can make it say 5 seconds. Maybe more appropriate for you. Call if you guys want some an output time limit. Most don't set a bleed valve for an output time limit. They want to say if it needs to bleed, go ahead and bleed. Okay. You couldn't set it. Again, it's going to put it in hours, minutes, and seconds. I don't know. That one's really a judgment call, and I leave that up to my clients. Reset output timeout. If it goes through that time limit and it goes, that's where you want to do it. Interlock channels, D1 is in my flow switch. If the flow switch is off, I don't want this to go off. You can interlock other pieces with that. Activate with channel is actually the opposite of the interlock. It's if flow switch comes on, I want this to come on. This is not the case. I don't want to activate any other channels. But like if you were doing bleed and feed, if the bleed relay comes on, I want the feed come on, so I could interlock two. And I'm pretty much done programming two. You know what I mean? So or I could just go ahead and shut them off. When they're highlighted, they're on. Minimum cycle relay. I do want you guys to set this. The minimum cycle relay, especially with my motor G valve, which is a capacitor closed valve, make sure that the valve gets energized for, let's say, 30 seconds minimally. Okay, what that means is that the valve, once this relay activates, it's going to stay on for 30 seconds period until it shuts off, whether it corrects itself or not. For my motor or capacitor start valves, even some of my competitions, that's good because it means that the valve is going to get 30 seconds of power. The capacitor is going to charge so that when we deactivate it, the capacitor in the valve closes it. Okay, and that's what that means. That we're going to minimal 30 second. Hand limit time, when I push it to hand, I want it to stay on for 10 minutes is what that means. Reset time total, it does keep a total of time for you. The input is connectivity. That's what I base my bleed on. So you can even pick pH, you can pick whatever you want there. But this one here is bleed. That's what I wanted on. Connectivity, force, or direction. Here's that one direction one I told, not one direction of the band, but one directional question they have here is force lower or force higher. Connectivity or the bleed valve is based on forcing it lower. When it comes on, what is the corrective action? The connectivity should start dropping, so it's going to force it lower. If I put force higher, some small towers I've seen that they feed in their inhibitor based on when it drops because they want to make sure that there's an inhibitor in there. That's what that means. Is when that relay goes off, I'm going to force it higher. If you were bleeding, you would never force it higher, it would stay on forever. Okay? Force lower, connectivity based on the bleed valve. That's kind of what that software portion of that, what that means. Name on off. Here's what I'm going to suggest to everybody is to fix that. It just says on off. That doesn't really mean anything to anyone. It really should say bleed, and I'm going to click down. I'm going to pick LED. Okay, so now it says bleed, and it says mode on off. So if I come back, and I've said all the things, and that's all the questions there are for the bleed on off, I'm going to go back one more. Now it says bleed R1. Makes way more sense to everybody. I'm going to go back to my screens, connectivity, the bleed R1. Okay? Now, when we get done and when you get done doing all those inputs and outputs, what I want you to do is go in here to the handoff auto, R1, turn it to auto. Good. Now it's in the auto position. But this is after you get done bleeding. This is that handoff auto that I told you guys was so nice about turning everything to auto and making sure everything's running properly. Okay? Very good.